Hello, I'm David Bianco. Welcome to the channel. So today's going to be an audio excursion of time. So our time machine is going to take us back to 1982. Mobile Fidelity Sound Labs, MFSL at the time, did an audiophile release of the 1979 release of Supertramp's Breakfast in America. And that release was all analog, of course, and it is got the orange band at the top. You can tell by looking at it that it's the older release. That shootout is going to be against the 2018 release with the blue banner top of Breakfast in America again, but it is a DSD step in the process. So we're going to compare the two and see what it's like. That's coming up next on our Safe and Sound Texas audio excursion. No, not that Breakfast in America. Well, this album really took me back. I remember getting this album when it first came out. I was a huge fan of Supertramp and had loved their initial album, starting with Crime of the Century. I'd bought the audiophile version of that, and then later the UHQR from Mobile Fidelity Sound Labs at the time. And so this album was actually released March 29th, 1979. It reached the Billboard top #1 spot for 6 weeks, and it yielded 4 singles, being The Logical Song, which is the one that's most noteworthy and became a top 10 single, Goodbye Stranger, Take the Long Way Home, and the title track, Breakfast in America. And this album has sold well over 20 million copies worldwide. Now here's a little caveat. This is a little one you could use for your trivia buster. This album originally was not going to be called Breakfast in America. No, it was going to be called Hello Stranger, which was in fact a line right out of the song Goodbye Stranger. But Davies and Hodgson, the two primary guys in Supertramp and the writers, decided to take a little direction turn on here and be a little more uplifting and positive, and decided to get away from the Stranger theme and decided to name this after the song Breakfast in America. Well, that being the case, what we have here is a 1982 release of this album by Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab. Again, it was released in total to the U.S. on March 29th, 79 through A&M Records, which I have an OG of that as well, but it didn't get the audiophile treatment until 82. And so this has an orange band at the top, and that'll be significant in a moment. And of course it says original master recording, which means original analog tapes. This is MFSL 1-045. So that's the number on this original one. Then after that one was released in 82, it took several decades. Finally, they came out again this was 2018. You can see the blue banner at the top there for this album. Looks a little different. It also is, nicely, a gatefold here, whereas the first one was not a gatefold. So, and this one is MFSL 1-471. And so this used the DSD process in the mastering chain. So the idea here is to compare these two and to discuss what I found to be the differences in them. I also was comparing these to my 1979 A&M OG release, and I had a Japanese version of this as well. So I'll talk about those a little bit, but I'm going to focus mainly on the Mobile Fidelities here. So, what are my takeaways? Well, they're different, that's for sure. They sound different. And so my takeaway is that the original analog, it is cut a bit quieter in the sense that it's not as hot, so to speak. You have to turn the volume up a bit more when you compare these two. The surface is very, very, very quiet. Now, mine has a few pops and ticks because it's been played a lot, but as far as the surface noise coming into the lead-in track and between tracks, it is quiet. It is, in fact, a bit quieter than the re-release by MOFI. So that's a good aspect. Now, the nature of this one is that it is very nuanced, but you have to turn it up to really get the nuance and to feel the bass. So my experience with this was different on my two systems, which I want to make point of. I have two systems. I have a quad system with a Pioneer QX949. And of course, this isn't a quad album, but I played it in 2-channel. But I have that set up, and I have an NAD 3140 integrated amp for 2-channel only. So in listening to these two, it was harder to get the nuance out of the Pioneer, even when I turned it up. But when I played it on the NAD, which is known for having great headroom, it came more alive. I did have to turn it up more, but it definitely came alive. So I would say on a higher end system, one really that can draw out the nuance and gives you good punch performance, this one sounds more nuanced. For a system like the Pioneer, where it's not quite as powerful and it doesn't have quite the headroom and the beefiness of it, this one was punchy. This one was more pronounced at a lower volume level. So it really kind of depends how you like to listen, what your preferences are when it comes to that. And I say that because this is the first time I've compared my two different systems with albums. And the reason I did that was I just felt that the Pioneer wasn't getting out of the this first version that came out in '82, the all analog. It just wasn't drawing out what was there, because I had remembered in the past hearing more articulate sounds out of it. And I haven't been listening to the Pioneer a lot over time, whereas the NAD I used to listen to almost exclusively. So by pulling the NAD and playing it there, I really got back to, yeah, this really sounds more nuanced. And some of the sounds in the more recent DSD release, again, things are a little more jumbled together, I'll say, and it's hard to hear some of the distinct instrumentation in it, but it does have a very hot sound. I don't want to say compressed, but I want to say it hits you a little harder. So it kind of depends on what your listening preferences are. If you really like something coming at you kind of in your face, this is going to be well rewarding you, as will the OG, I might add. The OG of this really holds up well. It really sounds great. It's kind of got the best of both worlds of these two, is kind of what I would say. Although I would say its surface noise is obviously a bit more being on your standard vinyl, but I'd say it was kind of a good cross between these two. So my point is, if you can find a really good, clean OG of this, I think you're going to be in really good shape in terms of sound. I was disappointed by the Japanese version. It just didn't sound as good as the original release here in the U.S. And although the surface noise was a little less on the Japanese, the bass wasn't quite as punchy. So again, ironically enough, the original analog version is the least punchy and needs you to really crank it up a bit to really feel it. Once you get there, the nuances are very nice and more discernible than they are in the DSD version or even the OG or the Japanese version. So if you're really looking for the nuance and you have a really good system, the OG analog is great. And I'm going to show you the prices of what they're going for on Discogs. Now, the re-release came out and it was $40, at the time, so it's a good value. I don't know that it's available anymore through MoFi, and I'll show you the Discogs pricing on it. It's gone up. But again, OGs you can definitely get probably for $20 or less in good condition. So and they are strong, short of, again, the surface noise is a little more evident than it is on the Mobile Fidelities. So a really great album, really a lot of choices, which is great, but they do come across differently. And I will say this, the DSD definitely is not a negative, in the sense that it doesn't totally take away what you can hear in this. But at the end of the day, if you really want to hear the nuance, you're going to end up going back to the original analog if you can have enough power and oomph in the system you have to draw it out. I'd say that's really where the difference lies. As a bonus piece of trivia for those of you who have stuck around, have you ever heard of the conspiracy theory about the cover of Breakfast in America and 9/11? Well, if you take that cover and you walk up to a mirror and you look above the Twin Towers, it kind of looks like those letters reversed are 9/11. Huh. Seems odd to me. So I hope you've enjoyed this comparison. And as always, if you subscribe to the channel and click the bell there, the black one gets you notifications. And liking the video is always great for the algorithm. Comments, always welcome. Questions, your perspective, anything you've experienced with comparing these two. I'd love to hear from you. So for now, as always, thank you for watching the Safe and Sound Texas Audio Excursion, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.